The machines beeped in steady rhythm, soft, persistent, like a metronome counting down the seconds of my life. I could hear everything. The hiss of the ventilator I no longer needed, the shuffle of footsteps on linoleum, the antiseptic smell that clung to every surface in this godforsaken ICU. But most of all, I could hear voices, familiar voices that made my blood run cold. The doctor says he might never wake up. That was Javier, my son, 35 years old, and his voice carried that same impatient edge it always had when he wanted something. Even if he does, the brain damage is severe. What about Mom? Gabriela, my daughter, 32, and I could hear the uncertainty in her tone. She'd always been the weaker one, the follower. Sunnydale Care Facility, Javier again, matter of fact, like he was discussing where to store old furniture. I checked it out. 12 grand a month, but it's 40 miles from here. Far enough that she won't be around to interfere when we start managing the assets. I wanted to scream. I wanted to open my eyes and grab my son by the throat and demand to know when he'd become this stranger. But I didn't. Something deeper than instinct told me to wait, to listen, to learn the full extent of the betrayal. That's when I heard the third voice, the one that hit me like a knife between the ribs. Javier, have you talked to the attorney yet? Adriana, my daughter-in-law, the woman I'd walked down the aisle at her wedding, the woman I'd welcomed into our family with open arms. Her voice was cold, calculating. We need to move before he has any chance to change the will. Hernandez Construction is worth $180 million. If he wakes up and finds out about the money you've already borrowed from the company accounts. My heart rate spiked. I felt it. The monitor beside me registered it with a sharp beep. Shh, Gabriela hissed. The nurse, relax. Javier's voice dropped to a whisper, but I could still hear every word, every poisoned syllable. It's just a fluctuation. He's not waking up. And even if he did, he paused. I could picture him, that calculating look he got when he was working an angle. I already spoke with Dr. Morrison. She'll certify that he's not mentally competent. We'll have full guardianship within a week. What if he contests it? Gabriela's voice trembled. He won't be able to. Adriana again. Jesus, she was the ringleader. Morrison's already backdating medical records showing cognitive decline over the past year. By the time this is over, your father will be a vegetable on paper. Legally, he won't have any say. I focused on my breathing. In, out, steady, controlled. I'd learned meditation from Juana 30 years ago when I was working 80-hour weeks and she was worried I'd have a heart attack before 40. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife had given me the tools to survive the very children we'd raised together. But Mom, Gabriela started. Your mother, Javier cut her off, goes to the home. She has nothing in her name. Everything's in Dad's name, and once we have guardianship, we make the decisions, not her. Silence, the kind that feels like a weight on your chest. Then, Gabriela barely audible. Okay. That single word broke something in me I didn't know could still break. I heard them leave. The door whispered shut, and I lay there, eyes closed, heart monitor showing a steady rhythm that betrayed none of the rage coursing through my veins. My name is Francisco Hernandez. I'm 62 years old. 8 days ago, I had a stroke during a board meeting. 8 days ago, I was worth $180 million with a construction empire that employed 300 people and had projects across California. 8 days ago, I had a family. Now, I had nothing but the knowledge that the children I'd sacrificed everything for were planning to strip me of my dignity, imprison my wife, and steal everything I'd built. But they'd made one critical mistake. They thought I was unconscious. I wasn't. Los Angeles, 1985. The memory came unbidden, the way memories do when you're lying motionless with nothing but time. I was 25 years old, covered in metal shavings and sweat, working the evening shift at Rodriguez Welding in East LA. $8 an hour, no benefits, no future. Just the promise that if I worked hard enough, maybe, I'd make supervisor by the time I was 40. The public library on 4th Street stayed open until 9. I'd go there after my shift, reeking of burnt metal and desperation, and teach myself AutoCAD from borrowed books. I couldn't afford a computer. Hell, I could barely afford dinner. But the library had 3 ancient desktop terminals, and if I got there early enough, I could claim one for 2 hours. That's where I met her. Juana Morales, 23 years old, volunteering as an English tutor for immigrants. She wore her hair long back then, and when she smiled, it felt like the sun breaking through LA's perpetual smog. I remember the first time she spoke to me. I was hunched over a terminal, trying to design a bridge support system on a napkin because I'd lost my computer time to some kid playing Oregon Trail. She walked over with a sandwich wrapped in aluminum foil. "You've been here 5 nights in a row," she said. Her English was perfect, but her accent still carried the music of Guadalajara. "You only drink coffee. This is from my mom. She makes extra." I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I was grateful and hungry enough to accept. "I'm going to build something," I told her, showing her my napkin sketch. "Something that lasts. Something that matters." She looked at my drawing, a young man's hubris rendered in ballpoint pen, and said, "One day you'll build buildings so tall they'll touch the clouds." 2 years later, we got married at the courthouse. Total cost, $300. No white dress, no tuxedo. Juana wore the only nice dress she owned, a blue one with white flowers. I wore a suit borrowed from my cousin, 2 sizes too big, with safety pins holding the pants up. The reception was in her parents' backyard. 30 people. Homemade tamales and carne asada, a case of Modelo. Someone's cousin had a guitar. It was the happiest day of my life. Standing there, holding Juana's hands, I made her a promise. "You'll never have to worry about money again. Our children will have everything we never had." At the time, I meant it as love. I didn't realize I was writing the script for my own destruction. 1988 to 1998, building the empire. The memories played like a film reel. Late nights at UCLA Extension, earning my civil engineering degree 1 class at a time. Juana working 2 jobs, daycare in the morning, cleaning offices at night, the studio apartment where we lived on Ramen and Hope. Javier was born in 1990. We were still in that studio, and I remember holding him at 3 in the morning while Juana slept, promising him he'd never know poverty, that he'd go to the best schools, that he'd have every opportunity I never had. I kept that promise. By 1993, when Gabriella was born, I'd secured my first major contract, a strip mall in Riverside. Small, but it was mine, my company. Hernandez Construction, 3 employees and a dream. By 1998, we had 70 employees and a house in Beverly Hills. Not old money Beverly Hills, but close enough. $2.8 million, 4 bedrooms, a pool. Gabriella learned to swim in that pool. I missed her first swimming lesson. I was in San Francisco closing a deal on an office complex. I missed Javier's 10th birthday party. I was in Sacramento meeting with state contractors. I missed our 15th anniversary. I was in Portland. Juana never complained. She'd just say, "We knew this was the price, Francisco. We're building something." But there was one night, 1997 I think, when she waited up for me. I came home at 2 a.m. from the airport. She was sitting in the kitchen, still in her bathrobe, and when I walked in, she didn't smile. "Francisco," she said, "the children need a father, not just money. They need you." "I'm doing this for them," I said. I believed it. So they never have to struggle. So they never have to choose between dinner and dreams. "I know." She touched my face. "But you're teaching them that money is more important than presence, that success means absence. Is that what you want them to learn?" I should have listened. I didn't. The door opened. I tensed, keeping my breathing steady. Different footsteps, lighter. The click of heels on linoleum. Adriana. She was alone. I heard her settle into the chair beside my bed, the creak of leather, the tap of laptop keys. Then her phone rang. "Ricardo?" She answered immediately. "My daughter's husband, the attorney." "Yes, I'm at the hospital." "No, just checking on the old man. Listen, I need you to draft a proposal for the Lee Group. They're offering $190 million for Hernandez Construction. That's $10 million more than your Spanish consortium." "Right, we'll split it 60-40 between Javier and Gabriela." "No, Gabriela doesn't need to know about the $5 million kickback. We'll route it through the Caymans." She paused. I could hear a male voice on the other end, too muffled to make out words. "Ricardo, you're the son-in-law. You need to be on our side, not his." "Yes, I know it's complicated, but he's not waking up, and even if he does, Morrison will." Another pause. "Fine. Draft it by Friday. I'll have Javier review. And Ricardo, make sure the embezzlement trail stays cold. If Francisco's accountant starts digging into those missing $8 million..." Her voice dropped. "We all go down." She hung up. $8 million. Javier had embezzled $8 million from my company. This wasn't just greed, this was systematic theft. And Adriana wasn't just supporting it, she was orchestrating the cover-up. I heard her stand, walk to the window, the scratch of a lighter. She was smoking, even though it was against hospital rules. The faint smell of tobacco drifted over. "You should have retired, old man," she said softly. To me, to my supposedly unconscious body. "You should have let Javier run things. But no, you had to hold on. You had to be the king of your little empire until the day you died." She took a drag. "Well, congratulations. You got your wish. You're dying. And when you're gone, we're going to sell everything you built and finally live the life we deserve." She stubbed out the cigarette on the windowsill and left. The door closed. I was alone. And for the first time in 8 days, I felt something other than shock or rage. I felt clarity. They'd made their choice. Now I had to make mine. The night shift was quieter. The hospital seemed to exhale after visiting hours ended, settling into a rhythm of beeping machines and hushed conversations at the nurses' station. At 11:30 p.m., someone new entered my room. The footsteps were different, heavier, deliberate, not the hurried click of day nurses rushing between patients. "Mr. Hernandez?" A man's voice, deep, controlled. "I'm Christopher Torres, Chris, night shift nurse." I heard him check the monitors, adjust the IV drip. Professional, efficient. Then he stopped. "Your heart rate," he said, speaking to himself. "It's elevated, not dangerously, but consistently, especially when there's conversation in the room." Silence. Then, quieter. "Your REM patterns are wrong too. You're not in a coma, are you?" My pulse spiked. The monitor betrayed me with a sharp beep. "Easy," Chris said. "I'm not going to report you. I'm going to ask you something, and if I'm right, I need you to move your right thumb. Just once. Can you do that?" I hesitated. 5 seconds. 10. Then I moved my thumb. "Christ," Chris exhaled. Okay, listen. I'm going to sit down, and you're going to keep your eyes closed, but we need to talk." I heard him pull the chair close to the bed. "My name is Christopher Torres. I'm 45, ex-Army medic, 15 years, including 3 tours in Afghanistan. I've seen men fake injuries to get off duty, fake pain to get morphine, fake unconsciousness to avoid interrogation. I know what real looks like, and I know what performance looks like." He paused. "This afternoon, I heard your son in the hallway. He was on the phone, talking about guardianship, about selling assets, about a nursing home for his mother, and I heard him laugh. Actually laugh. About how convenient your stroke was for his timeline." Another pause. "My father died 3 years ago, nursing home in Santa Monica. My brother put him there to get his house. Dad had Alzheimer's, but he wasn't that bad. He could still recognize us, still had good days. But my brother, he paid the home doctor to up Dad's medications, keep him sedated. Dad died 4 months later, 68 years old, healthy body, murdered spirit." Chris's voice hardened. "I couldn't prove it, but I knew, and I've lived with that guilt every day since. I couldn't save my father." He leaned closer. I could smell coffee and antiseptic. "But maybe I can save you. If you need help, if you're faking this to survive, I'm offering. No questions, no judgment, just help." I moved my thumb twice. "Yes, please." "Okay," Chris stood. "I work 5 nights a week, 11 to 7. Does your wife have a phone number I can call?" One thumb movement. "Yes. I'll figure it out from your records." "Sit tight, Mr. Hernandez. You're not alone anymore." He left the room, and for the first time in 8 days, I felt something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Beverly Hills. The same night, 10:47 p.m. Juana Hernandez sat in the dark. The living room stretched around her like a museum exhibit, 12,000 square feet of success, decorated by an interior designer whose name she could never remember. Everything was beige and cream and tasteful. Everything was expensive. Everything was empty. She didn't turn on the lights. The glow from the pool outside cast shifting blue patterns across the ceiling, and that was enough. She'd been sitting here for 3 hours since returning from the hospital, holding a photo album she hadn't opened in years. The leather was worn. The pages crackled. The first photo showed two kids in their 20s standing in front of a courthouse. Francisco in a borrowed suit, Juana in a blue dress from Ross. Both of them grinning like they'd won the lottery. In a way, they had. They'd found each other. She turned the page. Javier as a baby. Gabriela learning to walk. Family vacations to Disneyland, back when Francisco still took vacations. Birthday parties, Christmases, graduations. When had it gone wrong? She knew the answer. She'd known for a long time. She just hadn't wanted to admit it. 1 week before Francisco's stroke. Juana had come home early from her sister's. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter. Unusual for her, but she'd been distracted, worried. Francisco had been working even longer hours than usual, and when she'd asked him about it, he'd snapped at her. Actually snapped. That wasn't like him. She'd walked into the house and heard Javier's voice coming from Francisco's study. The door was ajar. "I'm telling you, I'll have the 2 million by the end of the month." Javier's voice was tight, desperate. "If I don't, they're going to expose everything." "No, Dad can't know. If he finds out I used the company name to borrow from loan sharks, Jesus, Adriana, he'll kill me." Juana had frozen in the hallway. "We need another plan," Javier continued. "Something permanent, something that, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we need to be ready for contingencies." She'd backed away silently, grabbed her phone, and left the house, drove around for 2 hours before coming back, making noise this time, announcing her arrival. Javier had been in the kitchen, making coffee, acting normal. "Hey, Mom, didn't know you were home." "Just got back, mijo? Your father here?" "Office, working late, as always." He'd smiled, that charming smile that used to melt her heart when he was 6 years old. Now it just made her skin crawl. 3 months before that, Gabriela had shown up crying, makeup ruined, hair a mess. She'd collapsed into Juana's arms in the foyer. "Ricardo's cheating on me," she'd sobbed. "I found messages, pictures. Mom, I don't know what to do. If I divorce him, the prenup, I'll lose everything." Juana had held her daughter, made tea, listened to the whole story. "I need Dad to give me money," Gabriela had said finally. "To hire a private investigator, to get evidence, to have leverage. Please, Mom, I can't ask him myself. He'll judge me. He'll say I should have been smarter." So Juana had asked Francisco, and Francisco, predictably, had written a check for $200,000 without question. "She doesn't need to pay it back," he'd said. "She's our daughter." 2 days later, Juana had been shopping in West Hollywood and seen Ricardo and Gabriela at a restaurant. Through the window, laughing, his hand on hers. No tension, no signs of a marriage in crisis. She'd walked past without going in. That night, she'd said nothing to Francisco. What would be the point? He'd make excuses. He'd say she'd misunderstood. He'd protect them, the way he always protected them. But Juana had understood perfectly. Her children were playing their father, and it was working. The photo album closed with a soft thump. Juana set it aside and looked around the dark living room. She'd spent 35 years building this life, this home, this family, and now she had to decide, save it or save herself and Francisco. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Mrs. Hernandez?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Christopher Torres. I'm a nurse at Cedars-Sinai. I'm calling about your husband." Her heart stopped. "Is he—" "He's fine. Better than fine, actually." A pause. "Mrs. Hernandez, I need you to come to the hospital, right now. Alone. Don't tell anyone. Not your children, not anyone. This is about your husband, but it's not bad news. It's complicated. Can you do that?" Something in his tone made her believe him. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up, grabbed her purse, drove through empty LA streets, her mind racing with possibilities. At 11:45 p.m., she walked into Cedars-Sinai through the emergency entrance. Chris Torres was waiting. Tall, fit, kind eyes, tired eyes. "Follow me." Chris led her through corridors, past the main nurses' station, taking a route that seemed designed to avoid cameras and people. He stopped outside room 412, Francisco's room. "Before we go in," Chris said quietly, "I need you to understand something. Your husband is awake. He's been awake for at least a day, maybe longer. He's been faking the coma." Juana's breath caught. "Why?" I think you know why, Mrs. Hernandez. I think you've suspected for a while that something was wrong with your children. And I think your husband found out just how wrong things are. Chris opened the door. You have 10 minutes. I'll watch the hall. Juana stepped inside. The room was dark except for the glow of monitors. Francisco lay motionless in the bed, eyes closed, looking exactly like he had for the past 8 days. She moved to his side, placed her hand on his. His hand was warm, alive, and when she touched him, she felt his fingers twitch. Francisco, she whispered, Chris told me you're awake. Slowly, like a man emerging from deep water, Francisco opened his eyes. For a moment they just stared at each other, 35 years of marriage in a single look. Then Juana leaned down and wrapped her arms around him, careful of the IV lines, and Francisco held her with whatever strength he had left. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. When Juana finally pulled back, her face was wet with tears. You heard them, she said, not a question. Everything. Francisco's voice was raspy from disuse, barely more than a whisper. Javier embezzled $8 million. Adriana is orchestrating the cover-up. Gabriela and Ricardo are complicit. They're planning to put you in a nursing home 40 miles away. They've bought a doctor to certify I'm incompetent. They're going to sell everything. Juana nodded slowly. I know about the embezzlement. I suspected about the rest. Francisco's eyes widened. You knew? I heard Javier on the phone, a week before your stroke, and Gabriela's fake marriage crisis. I saw her with Ricardo 2 days after she told us he was cheating. They were happy, Francisco. It was all a performance. Why didn't you tell me? Juana's laugh was bitter. Because you would have forgiven them. You would have given them another chance, another loan, another excuse. You've been doing it their whole lives. Francisco wanted to argue. He couldn't. She was right. This is my fault, he said finally. I gave them too much. I taught them that money solves everything. I was never there, Juana. I was always working, always building, always... Stop. Juana's voice was firm. We don't have time for guilt. We have time for action. She opened her purse and pulled out a manila folder, set it on the bed. What is this? Our escape plan. Francisco stared at her. Our what? Juana opened the folder. Inside were documents, passports, bank statements. I've been preparing for 3 months, ever since I heard Javier on the phone, ever since I realized we'd lost our children or they'd lost themselves. I knew eventually we'd reach a point where we had to choose, them or us. She pulled out 2 passports. Both had recent photos, but the names were different. Carlos and Maria Delgado, she read. That's us now. Got them through Thomas Mendoza's contact. Completely legal. Second passport's dual citizenship basis through my grandmother's Mexican nationality. Francisco couldn't believe what he was hearing. You've been planning this for 3 months? I hired a private investigator 2 months ago. She pulled out another document. Richard Chen, former FBI. He's been tracking Javier's financials, the embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the emails between Adriana and Ricardo and Dr. Morrison. I have everything, Francisco. Every crime, every betrayal, every lie. She set down a flash drive. It's all here. Insurance. If they come after us, we release it. Javier goes to prison for 20 years. Ricardo loses his law license. Adriana becomes an accomplice to fraud. Gabriela. Her voice cracked slightly. Gabriela probably gets a lesser charge, but she's still complicit. Francisco picked up the flash drive with shaking hands. You did all this without telling me? You would have tried to fix it, to save them, to give them one more chance. Juana took his face in her hands. I love you, Francisco, but your greatest weakness is that you can't let go. You can't accept that some things can't be fixed, some people can't be saved, especially if they don't want to be saved. They're our children. They were our children. Now they're strangers who share our DNA and want our money. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Francisco looked at the documents spread across his bed. Passports, bank statements showing accounts he'd never seen before. He picked one up. Banco Nacional de Costa Rica, $4 million. Money I earned from real estate investments, properties in my name only from before we got rich. I've been quietly buying and selling for 20 years. You were always so focused on Hernandez construction, you never noticed I had my own portfolio. She smiled sadly. I learned from you, Francisco. Always have a backup plan. always have leverage. Costa Rica? Playa Hermosa, good expat community, no extradition for financial crimes under 50 million, excellent health care, and most importantly, nobody there knows who we are. Francisco stared at his wife, this woman he'd been married to for 35 years, and realized he was seeing her clearly for the first time in decades. Not the quiet, supportive spouse, not the caregiver and homemaker. Juana was a strategist, a survivor, a warrior. "When do we leave?" he asked. "Soon. But first, you need to recover enough to walk, and we need to move the rest of the assets, yours, before Javier and Adriana can freeze them." "They're probably already trying." "I know, that's why I brought this." She pulled out another document. "Power of attorney. Thomas Mendoza drafted it 6 months ago. It gives me full legal authority over all your assets while you're incapacitated. It's dated, notarized, completely legal." 6 months ago? "Juana, you've been planning this since Javier started stealing, since I realized our children had become people I didn't recognize, since I understood that we built this empire on sand and it was going to collapse. I just didn't know when." Francisco felt tears burning his eyes, not from grief, from gratitude. "I don't deserve you." "No," Juana agreed. "You don't. But you're stuck with me anyway." She kissed him. Soft, gentle. The kiss of two people who'd survived everything together and weren't about to stop now. A soft knock on the door. Chris poked his head in. "Security's coming back. We're out of time." Juana stood quickly. "I'll come back tomorrow night. Same time. Chris will arrange it." "What do I do until then?" "What you've been doing. Stay unconscious. Listen. Learn. And trust me, Francisco, for the first time in 35 years, trust that I know what I'm doing." She kissed him once more and was gone. Chris checked the monitors, made sure everything looked normal. "Your wife is a badass," he said quietly. "I'm just figuring that out. The good ones always are. Get some rest, Mr. Hernandez. Real rest. You're going to need your strength." Chris left. The room fell silent again. Francisco lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. His children wanted to destroy him. His wife had been preparing to save him. And in 7 days, if everything went according to plan, Francisco and Juana Hernandez would cease to exist. Carlos and Maria Delgado would be born. And somewhere in Costa Rica, far from Beverly Hills and Hernandez construction and ungrateful children, they would finally live the life they should have lived all along. Simple, honest, free. But first, they had to survive the next week. And Francisco had a feeling it was going to be the longest week of his life. Day 2, hospital room, 1:47 a.m. Chris had cleared the hallway, 15 minutes, maybe 20. Juana moved swiftly to Francisco's bedside. He looked stronger, more alert. "We have 7 days," she said without preamble, pulling out her tablet. "Phase 1, I filed the power of attorney yesterday. I control all financial decisions now. When Javier finds out, probably tomorrow, he'll panic and lawyer up." "Can he challenge it?" "Not if we move fast." Phase 2, asset extraction, 3 simultaneous moves. She counted on her fingers. 1, 20 million into cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and Ethereum, untraceable. I'm meeting a broker tomorrow. 2, liquidate our 3 rental properties, 10 million, cash deals, 72 hours. 3, offshore transfers, 40 million to Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore, small transfers, different routes. By the time Javier notices, it's done. Francisco absorbed this. 70 million liquid. 74 with my Costa Rica account. The rest, the company, the house, we leave it. Let them fight over the carcass. And phase 3? Day 7. We don't fly from LAX. Javier will be watching. We drive to San Diego. Southwest flight under our new names to Cabo, then Costa Rica. You disappear from this hospital during a fake medical emergency. She glanced at Chris. Tell him. Chris stepped forward. I trigger a code blue. Fake cardiac arrest. Chaos, crash cart, everyone rushing in. You're dressed as an orderly. You walk out the emergency exit. My cousin Pablo picks you up. You're gone before they realize the patient vanished. That costs you your job. Mrs. Hernandez is paying me enough, and after hearing your kids, I'm done being a bystander. Day 3. Thomas Mendoza's office, 10:15 a.m. Juana locked the door behind her. Francisco's awake, Thomas. He's been faking the coma. The elderly attorney's eyes widened. My God, why? She slid the investigation folder across his desk. Read. Mendoza's face darkened with each page. Javier's embezzlement. 8.3 million over 3 years. Emails between Adriana and Ricardo planning the retirement strategy. Texts with Dr. Morrison about falsified records. Recorded calls of Gabriella's fake divorce crisis. That boy, Mendoza whispered. I taught him to drive. I was at his wedding. I need your help. 4 things. Juana was all business. 1. Defend my power of attorney when Javier challenges it. 2. Set up offshore accounts by tomorrow. 3. Transfer Hernandez Construction to a Delaware holding company with me as sole owner. Francisco sells it to me for $1. 4. Keep this evidence sealed. If Javier comes after us, you release it to the FBI. He'll go to prison, 15 to 20 years. I know. Juana's voice didn't waver. He stopped being my son when he decided I was a problem instead of a person. Mendoza locked the folder in his safe. Consider it done. Same day, Dr. Morrison's office, 2:30 p.m. Javier didn't sit. 11 days. When do you sign the incompetency papers? Morrison shifted nervously. I need 2 more weeks to establish a pattern. We don't have 2 weeks. Adriana leaned forward. Juana's making moves. We need those papers now. I can't risk my license. You already risked it when you took our $50,000. Javier's voice was ice. You're in this, all the way. The only question is whether you get paid or get exposed. Morrison's face flushed. Are you threatening me? 3 days, doctor. Sign the papers, backdate the records, or we find someone who will. And we tell them you were the first doctor we approached. Morrison looked trapped. Fine. 3 days. Hollywood Hills, 5 p.m. Ricardo poured scotch without offering Gabriella any. Your mother hired forensic accountants. They're auditing the company. They'll find everything in a week. Gabriella's stomach dropped. What do we do? We distance ourselves from Javier. You signed as witness on those transfers. Legally, you're an accomplice. He drank. We cooperate with your mother. We stay quiet. When this goes to court, we're on her side. He's my brother. He's a criminal about to drag us down with him. I love you, Gabriella, but I love my career more. I'm not going to prison because your brother's an idiot. What do I tell Javier? Nothing. Ghost him. Delete his texts. Let him drown alone. He kissed her forehead, perfunctory, and left. Gabriella stood in her enormous kitchen, surrounded by marble and emptiness, and realized she'd never felt more alone. Day 4. Hospital room, 11 a.m. Javier came alone, sat close to the bed. Hey, Dad, I know you can't hear me, but I need to say something. His voice was soft, broken. I spent my whole life trying to impress you. Every deal I closed, I came to you excited, ready to hear you say you were proud. And you know what you'd say? Good work, but check the margins closer next time. It was never enough. I was never enough. Francisco's heart monitor beeped faster. Adriana told me 3 years ago, your father will never step back. He'll run that company until he dies, and you'll always be his employee, never his partner. So I took what should have been mine, 8 million over 3 years, and it felt good. Like finally, I was in control. Pause. Javier's voice cracked. Now everything's falling apart. Mom's moving money. Mendoza blocked my accounts. I'm terrified, Dad, because when you wake up, you'll find out everything, and you'll hate me. Maybe you always did. He stood abruptly. Dr. Morrison signs tomorrow. Once we have guardianship, I'll prove I was always capable. You just never gave me the chance. At the door. I wish you'd believed in me, Dad. Just once. The door closed. Francisco fought tears. Because Javier was right and wrong, and it was too late to fix either truth. Days 5 to 6, montage. Juana moved through L.A. like a ghost executing her plan. Chase Bank. 22 million wired to offshore accounts. Estate planning, she told the nervous banker, sliding Mendoza's power of attorney across the desk. Crypto exchange. 20 million converted to Bitcoin and Ethereum through 6 exchanges across 4 countries. She memorized the 24-word seed phrase in the parking lot. Real estate closings. 3 properties sold in 72 hours. $8 million cash. The buyers didn't ask questions. By day 6, $74 million had vanished from Francisco's empire like smoke. Day 6, 3 p.m. Hospital. Javier burst into room 412 with Adriana, Dr. Morrison, and 2 lawyers. Chris, out. This is family business. Chris reluctantly left but stayed outside the door. Inside, Stephen Burke, Javier's attorney, laid documents on the bedside table. With Dr. Morrison's certification of incompetence, we're filing for emergency guardianship. Hearing is tomorrow. Dr. Morrison pulled out a syringe. I need a blood sample to finalize. The door burst open. Juana walked in with Thomas Mendoza and a woman in a pantsuit. Step away from my husband, now. Javier spun. Mom, what? Dr. Morrison, you're not touching him. You're under investigation for medical fraud. Juana nodded to the woman. Detective Sarah Martinez, LAPD, Financial Crimes. Martinez showed her badge. Dr. Morrison, I have a warrant to seize Francisco Hernandez's medical records. We have evidence you falsified documents for payment. Morrison went pale. Mendoza stepped forward. Javier, I suggest you stay quiet. I also have a warrant, civil, for embezzlement investigation. $8.3 million missing from Hernandez Construction. Adriana grabbed Javier's arm. We need to leave. Now. Javier turned desperate. Mom, Dad wouldn't want this. Your father is in a coma. You can't speak for him, but I can. Juana's voice was steel. As his wife of 35 years, I know he wants dignity and respect. 2 things you stopped giving him. Gabriela crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't. You have 5 seconds, Gabriela. Stay with your brother or stay with your father. Choose. 5 seconds of silence. Gabriela looked at Javier, at Ricardo in the corner, at her mother. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. She left with Ricardo. Javier made one last attempt. Mom, Dad built that company for me, for us. You're wrong. Juana's voice was devastating. He built it for his family, and you're not our family anymore. They left. Javier, Adriana, Gabriela, Ricardo. Dr. Morrison was escorted out by Martinez. The room emptied. Juana walked to Francisco's bedside. You can open your eyes. They're gone. Francisco opened them, tears streaming. You just cut ties with our children. I saved us from them. There's a difference. She squeezed his hand. We have 24 hours. We leave tomorrow night. Day 7, morning. Mendoza briefed them in a secure conference room. Asset transfer complete. 74 million liquid. Hernandez Construction is now owned by Hermosa Holdings, Juana's company. Javier has no claims. And the evidence? Francisco asked. Sealed in my safe. If Javier files suit, I release it to the FBI. He'll get 15 to 20 years. Francisco's face was heavy. That's my son. Your son stole $8.3 million and tried to destroy you both. Mendoza was firm. This is justice. His new attorney laid out options. We can file an emergency injunction, claim undue influence. No time. Javier paced. She's moved everything. We need to stop them from leaving the country. The attorney leaned back. I have a contact in border control. We can flag their passports. If they try to fly out, they'll be detained. Adriana smiled. Do it. Javier made the call. Bobby, I need a favor. Flag 2 passports, Francisco and Juana Hernandez. Fraud investigation. Can you do it? I'll pay you $100,000 if this works. Day 7, 6:45 p.m., hospital. Francisco was dressed in street clothes under his hospital gown. Chris had smuggled them in. Juana waited in the parking garage. 6:58 p.m. Chris's hand hovered over the monitor controls. 7 p.m. Flatline. Alarms shrieking. Code blue, room 412. Doctors and nurses rushed in. Chaos. Francisco's body jerked, then went still. Start compressions. Get the crash cart. Chris, I'll get it. He wheeled Francisco, dressed now as an orderly, out the emergency exit. Pablo Torres waited with a van. In, fast! Francisco scrambled inside. They drove off. No lights, no sirens, just a regular van disappearing into L.A. traffic. 2 minutes later, Dr. Phillips returned to find an empty bed and an open window. Security! The patient's gone. 7:15 p.m. Pacific Coast Highway. Francisco lay hidden under a blanket in Juana's back seat. We have 2 hours to LAX. Plenty of time. No. Juana's voice was tight. Change of plan. I have a bad feeling. Javier won't just let go. We're not flying from LAX. The charter, screw the charter. We drive to San Diego. I booked a backup. Southwest, 11:45. Cabo, then Costa Rica tomorrow. Francisco smiled despite everything. You always have a backup plan. I lived with you 35 years. Of course I do. 8:30 p.m. LAX, private terminal. Javier paced, flanked by TSA officers he'd bribed. Flight 271, Hermosa charter. They're flagged. They can't board. Hours passed. 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., 10 p.m. Nobody came. Adriana, they're not coming. Javier panicked. Check all airports. LAX, Burbank, Orange County. 10:45 p.m., San Diego International. Francisco and Juana, wearing baseball caps and sunglasses, checked in at Southwest. The ticket agent scanned their passports. Beep, red flag. One moment, she called her supervisor. David Kim checked the screen. Passports flagged, says detained for questioning. Francisco's heart sank. Juana stayed calm. There's a mistake. My son, Javier Hernandez, has a restraining order against him. He's abusive. I'm afraid he filed false reports to stop us from escaping. She pulled out a document, a real restraining order Mendoza had filed yesterday, anticipating exactly this scenario. Here's the court order. Javier can't come within 500 feet of us. If he filed this report, it's a violation. David studied it. Let me verify. He called LAPD. Detective Martinez? Yes, I see. Thank you. He hung up. I apologize for the inconvenience. You're free to go. 11:45 p.m. On the plane, wheels up. LA lights disappeared below clouds. Francisco and Juana held hands. We did it. We did it. 1 week later, Javier's house. The table was covered with legal documents, bills, collection notices. Dr. Morrison had been arrested. FBI opened an investigation. Mendoza had released the evidence. I'm taking a plea deal, Javier said hollowly. 5 years instead of 15. Adriana was packing. I'm filing for divorce. Gabriela stared at nothing. Ricardo already filed, said I'm a liability. A letter arrived, hand-delivered, from Francisco. Javier, by the time you read this, your mother and I are far away. You won't find us. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it for survival, for dignity. You chose money over family, greed over love. Now you live with the consequences. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. If you ever truly understand why we left, you might find us. I won't say where. But if you grow and change, you'll know where to look. I still love you. I just can't trust you anymore. Francisco. Javier broke down, real, ugly, crying. Adriana didn't comfort him. Gabriela sat frozen, dissociated. The old life was over. 6 months later, Playa Hermosa, Costa Rica, a small beach house, modest, comfortable. Francisco and Juana sat on the veranda drinking coffee, watching the Pacific. Do you miss Beverly Hills? Francisco asked. Sometimes, but not with nostalgia, just as a memory of a different life. I sleep better here, first time in 20 years. The mailman delivered a letter from Los Angeles, from Gabriela. Mom, Dad, I don't know if this will reach you, but I need to write. Javier got 6 years. Adriana divorced him. Ricardo divorced me. I lost everything, and I deserved it. But losing everything taught me what you tried to teach me all along. Money doesn't make family. Love does. Loyalty does. Respect does. I don't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry. I understand now why you left. I would have done the same. If one day you can see me again, not as your daughter, but as a stranger, I'd be grateful. But I understand if that never happens. I love you. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Gabriela. Francisco finished reading, handed it to Juana. Maybe she's changed. Maybe, but hurt doesn't mean change. If she's truly different, she'll prove it, not with words, with years. And if she does, then maybe we give her a second chance. But not today, not this year, maybe never. Francisco nodded, folded the letter, put it in a drawer, sunset. They walked the beach hand in hand. Do you regret it? Juana asked. Leaving? No. The empire? No. Our children? Every day. We didn't lose them. We set them free to find themselves. If they come back better people, Good. If not, we have everything we need right here. Francisco looked at Juana. I have everything I need right here. They kissed against the sunset. People say money can't buy happiness. I learned something else. Money can steal happiness if you're not careful. I built an empire. I gave my children everything, and in the process, I lost them. But in losing them, I found myself. I found Juana. I found peace. Some say we ran away. They're wrong. We didn't run from something. We ran to something, to the life we should have lived all along. My name is Francisco Hernandez. I'm 62 years old. I was worth 180 million. Now I'm worth about 50 million, most of it hidden, invested, safe. But I'm richer now than I ever was. Because I have the only thing that truly matters, the woman I love, and the freedom to live on our own terms. That, my friends, is priceless.